Sri Yantra, an ancient aid to meditation in India. A diagram potent with many hidden meanings, symbolism, and healing powers. So there are 3 parts, 3 DVDs. The first is introduction, setting, and background. Part 2 is basic concepts that are very helpful in understanding Sri Yantra. And Part 3 is the hard inner work, if you choose, the Tantric practice of meditation toward illumination. So this first DVD, Sri Yantra, Part 1, Introduction. We'll go, symbolically of course, from the center point out to the ground plane. Gates, squares, circles, lotus petals, triangles, and a center point, bindu. We'll deal with the setting and background, a survey of Tantrism set within a certain religious tradition, the Vedic religion, with its Vedas and Upanishads, ancient texts, and its deities. And the Tantras were later written, and Tantrism emerged really as a counterpoint in a way to Vedism. Tantrism means that which extends or spreads. And Sri Yantra and its 9 chakras, as they're often called. Triangles ascending, aspiration, and descending, grace. Shaktis of evolution, and Shaktas of involution. The first DVD. In the second part, basic concepts, an assessment of several important ideas that are important to help understand the Sri Yantra. Macrocosmos, microcosmos. Potentiality inherent in nature or evolution. All in one in all, oneness and multiplicity. The ideas of Shakti and Shakta as paired opposites. Accessibility of the divine through effort, yoga that is, and the goal of identity with God through various yogas and other practices, and Sri Yantra seen as 3-dimensional. Part 3, the third DVD, will deal with a working meditation practice, basically. We'll start, in this case, from the ground plane, the outer part, go through symbolic walls and gates. The periphery is our security in a way. Circular belts, 3 of them to hold us, and then the lotuses, 16 fulfilling aspects and energies, 8 inner agitators and stressors, very important, and then the triangles, 14 inner pushers but promisers, 10 inner goals to achieve, the inner protectors, 10 also, and 8 healing energies through mantric sound, mantras, and the center triangle, chakra, our surprise gift giver to ourselves, and we'll end up with the center point, love, bliss, really the divine. And finally, Symbol of the Infinite by Sri Aurobindo, a poem. The Sri Yantra is one of the many tools or techniques used in aspiring to connect with God, to worship God, to try to feel God working within us. It is said to depict and symbolize the secrets of the universe. It is to meditate with, to discover the energies and consciousness that it can generate within us. It is highly symbolic, but meant to be understood as 3-dimensional, like a mystic mountain on many levels up to a central point. Different artists, of course, have used varying colors. Geometries can give us a deeper sense of the divine. Physical forms can be a window to the spirit which is formless. The yoga of human experience is, in a way, a gateway to God. A quick look at the Sri Yantra shows that it consists of many triangles in the middle, 43 in all, surrounded by 2 circles of lotus petals, and then 3 circles and squares further out with openings or gates on the 4 sides. Spiritually, an ancient text has it this way. The great offering is the union of I-ness and thisness, turned out of the higher regions of the mind, thus dissolving everything into the great light. One's body becomes full of bliss, and one becomes the light itself. Then one meditates on the Sri Yantra as the form pattern emerged out of one's own light. As a quick overview, we'll begin with the center and work out, with a little dot that is the center point of all, representing supreme spiritual bliss, light, potentially everything, potentially. Called a bindu, it is the center, but without a radius or circumference, and without any area. It's a seed of sound, the seed of the entire universe, and the highest point. It is, in a way, God, the nucleus of condensed male energy of consciousness and potentiality. It is beyond time and space, but it's static, not dynamic. When we'll do our meditation later, we'll start with the outside and end with this central dot. The inmost triangle is next. It's a symbol of the highest feminine principle, love, energy, and power. The single point bindu here transforms itself into 3 points and lines, the expansion of space and time itself. It's dynamic, not static, and is seen to represent 3 states of consciousness: the waking state, the dream state, and deep sleep or dreamless state. Its inverted triangle represents the feminine, and it also implies 3 important energies: the power of will, the power of knowledge, and the power of action. This triangle is also the giver of all accomplishments. What we believe we have already achieved is actually seen as received by us, and finally understood as a gift, a surprise gift giver of what is already ours. Surprise gift giver. All of creation is the outcome of the union of the center point and of this 3-sided triangle, abstracted here in a most austere graphic form. Symbolically, it is male consciousness and female energy, in unity, united. Although unity is an intellectual concept, on an emotional level it means serenity, equality, equilibrium. The bindu and this first triangle transform themselves via many lines into the 8 triangles around them. These triangles represent the removers of all diseases, mantric healers. They are the 8 ways to get rid of what ails us, to resolve our psychic pains and physical blockages by using sound. Mantric therapists to eliminate our fears, stresses, aches, disharmonies, and tensions by music of the spirit. Mantric therapists they are. Mantric sound can heal what ails and troubles us. Then comes the first group of 10 triangles, the givers of all protection, as they're termed, defenders. They are shelter to aid us inwardly, security granted by God, the omniscient and omnipotent Godhead, giving us a sense of inner authority, knowledge, and support, destroying the ills and bad habits of our bodies and minds, offering us the image of a protective shield around us, even blissful care of our spiritual needs. These 10 defenses secure us, 10 defending triangles. Next is the second group of 10 triangles, the achievers of realization, or the accomplishers of all deep purposes. They help us achieve realistic goals and grant opportunities. They give us inner riches and spiritual growth for both ourselves and others. They remove our suffering, obstacles, and fears. They give energy to appreciate beauty for our senses and goodness and joy for our souls. These 10 triangles bring out and encourage our real selves. Then comes the 14-cornered figure, or 14 triangles, the givers of good fortune, as it is said. They give us a sense of hope, of promise, but tough inner work is also necessary. They will stir us up, control, chase us, and delude us. They will attract and delight and please us, and fulfill us with feelings of success and affluence, only to arrest us for our self-deceptions. They will illumine us with sound and destroy our harmful dualities, releasing us from illusions. 14 pushing but promising triangles, they ask us symbolically to do a kind of spiritual, alchemical work. Pushing but promising, they will mix us up only to smooth us out and heal us. So up till now, all these lines and angles are delicate but sharp. The 8 lotus petals or rings are next, agitators of all. ways to shake us up or neutralize the emotional defenses we depend on, which are really blocks in our psyches, obstructions to our spiritual growth. These petal shapes are flattened in a way, squeezed. They will push, symbolically, our inner agitation and defensiveness to our very conscious attention. They are necessary stressors. Next out are the 16 lotus petals, fulfillers of our spiritual hopes, or signifiers of fulfilled desires. They are the means in which our inner needs are realized, or the very human faculties through which our spiritual aspirations and expectations are accomplished. We'll see how they are the givens of human experience, the 16 gifts of our bodies, minds, and souls. Round and smooth are the curves and petals here. And finally, there are 4 concentric lines forming 3 circular areas, supporting straps or belts they are, and 3 lines forming a square of sorts, but with 4 openings or portals on the sides. This space between the square lines and the circles, here in red, is called the enchanter of the triple worlds, meaning the physical earth, the astral cosmological world, and the heavenly celestial planes. This space between squares, which are our rigidities, and circles, which is our movement and flow, is our charmer, our spiritual charismatic enchanter. The square portals or gates and the circular belts will symbolically secure us for our endeavor. And outside the squares is the ground plane, or earth stretch as it's called, the lower base of the mystic mountain idea. Squares, circles, many triangles, and a point. Sri Yantra, highly figurative traces of our little spiritual journey. But our meditative voyage, after a while, will be in reverse order, beginning with the squares, ending with the bindu. The worship of Sri Yantra, it is said, will bestow upon you peace, prosperity, power, protection, health, wealth, courage, wisdom, and divine grace. The Sri Yantra has emerged from a single point to a vast destiny of consciousness bliss in 3 dimensions. The idea is for us to move through the progressive stages of enlightenment, from the earthly plane at the outer part of Sri Yantra to supreme joy in the central point, the bindu. It's one of the most abstracted spiritual diagrams in the entire world. Now we have seen the Sri Yantra from the mental idea of the center outward, which has repeated a process of becoming, so that a single pointedness of creation expands into the great multiplicity of existence as we know it. It's a seeming simplicity, but full of potentiality, bursting into the most complexity and intricacy we can possibly imagine, in many dimensions. But let's put this into a broader perspective. In India, there are many religious practices and spiritual techniques, and different priests and teachers and masters who give instructions, gurus. Worship in temples is most common, both individually and in family or other groups. There are many different architectural styles in various parts of the country, erected in different ages. And many are the temples of their deities seen at or outside these temples. There's a great diversity in what is seen as the holy in India. Hinduism and Islam are the major religions, but the faith of the Sikhs, Christians, Buddhists, and Jains are strong minorities, along with many others. Many are the forms of reverence, worship, and devotion throughout India. That central point in the Sri Yantra, the bindu, symbolically the center of all, is here as a small white shrine in the center of the temple's Bindu Lake, as they call it. First, let's look briefly at some of the Hindu beliefs and religious practices which were the background for early Tantrism and which influenced it. First, Vedic religion. The Vedas are the earliest sacred texts of the Aryan people, who were in northwest India around 6,000 years ago or so. Their Vedas consist of hymns, sacrificial hymns of praise, of ritual formulas of chants, and of magic and spells. The Vedas were first transmitted orally, later written down on little palm leaf pages like these. Veda means sacred knowledge. The Aryans' ritual sacrifices were meant to keep order in the physical world, a proper social structure for a happy and prosperous life. A strict observance of these ceremonies was critical, and was at first very primitive, done by sacrificing animals. Later these events became more symbolic, but always with a sacrificial altar fire for offering grains, butter, fruit, etc. It was society's upper class of Brahmins who were responsible for these rites. In public, 3 fires were the norm, lit in offering to Vedic gods, 33 principal gods, and attended by many highly trained Brahmin priests chanting hymns from the Vedas. It was a very patriarchal religion, so different from the Tantric. In private, just 1 fire. The priests were seen as nearly divine in Vedic society, and so were some additional Vedic commentaries called the Brahmanas. Notice the Sanskrit word Om in the center, sound symbol for God. It corresponds to the CenterPoint, the bindu of the Sri Yantra. Here the fellow is chanting mantras and sacrificing to ask for rain from Indra, the god of the sky. A mantra was seen as the sound body of God in Vedic times. Divine sound vibrations, verse prayers. It's the repetition of chanting the same sound, word, or phrase. Om is best known. God embodied in a sound form is a mantra. God embodied in sound form, Om. A Brahmin listening to a holy mantra of the Vedas. Vowels in a language were seen as the feminine energy of God, giving power to the static consonants of the male. Male energized by female, as we will see in the Sri Yantra. Even the Vedic Gayatri mantra became personified as a goddess, said to open the door of cosmic consciousness. This mantra is said to create illumination, awaken inner powers, and bring blessings. This is actually the Gayatri mantra that we're listening to. This is a Vedic cosmography, with the sun in the center, and the moon and 7 main planets symbolized as gods all around. Vedic sacrifices were mystical entities in themselves, made to their many gods, gods of the heavens, gods of the sky, and gods of the earth. Surya, the sun god, riding in his heavenly chariot. The sacred knowledge of the Veda means revelation, known only to the Brahmin priests, very different from Tantric practice. And Chandra, another example. He's the moon god. Vedic religion became the touchstone of Hindu religious orthodoxy, but it did not survive into later times as a major religion in itself. Now Tantrism. This is especially different, essentially non-Vedic in practice and much more abstract. Very importantly, the sacred rites were open even to women and non-Brahmins. Tantrism literally means that which extends or spreads. A tantric image here. In a more narrow but more popular sense, really, Tantrism is a radical way, an esoteric way to achieve enlightenment. It pays very little attention to Hindu scripture, and not at all to the patriarchal priestly caste of Brahmins with their Vedas. It extends to all people. But this is said to be the Sri Yantra with the most correct format and colors, but I must say it really doesn't matter much. The outermost square is neutral or brown. Then there are 4 gates with 3 square walls, the outer wall being white. The middle wall is orange-red like the rising sun. The inner wall is yellow like the color of butter. 3 circular lines are just lines but do represent belts or straps. The 16-petal lotus is pink like a lotus flower. The 8-petal lotus is red, the color of the banduka flower, it is said, or scarlet marrow. The 14 colored triangles are green like the color of glowworms. The outer 10-cornered triangles are red like the japa kusuma, the red hibiscus. The inner 10-cornered triangles are blue. The 8-cornered triangles are red like the little Dadini flower. The innermost triangle is white. The bindu, the central point, is red like sindoor, the vermilion powder women use for the little bindi or dot on the forehead. Now I want to focus for a bit on the extraordinary symbolism of all the triangles. Triangles descending, triangles ascending. A triangle like this with the apex up represents a broad-based, one-pointed aspiration rising from the depths to the heights. Shakta, male energy. The cone of fire, it has been called. Cone of fire. The fire ever burning in the heart. On its crest, the top, it carries the surrender to the divine. A triangle with the apex downward like this is the corresponding Shakti, the grace of the Divine Mother, the origin of all things. It is female energy. Two triangles over each other signifies a rising aspiration and a responding grace. The ascent of the being and descent of the divine, the dynamic female is superimposed on the heart of the static male. I repeat again, since this is very important. In creation, everything is not fully created, completely manifest. Not yet. There are many things latent, some partially evolved, some beginning to be evolved. And now a macrocosmic view of these triangles. The triangles Earth on the top, air, ether is the largest, water, and fire the smallest triangle. I want to mention all these details are not necessary to understand and practice the Sri Yantra. Scholars over centuries have added these complexities. 5 Shaktis of involution. Illusion, Maya, the lowest triangle. Pure wisdom, concept of the one God, Godhead, or the Divine Lord, that is divine oneness. And the concept of the multiplicity of divinity, or many sacred things in our lives, divine diversity, the smallest triangle. When all put together, the 5 and the 4 create our interesting world. That was a macrocosmic view, philosophical, sublimated in a way, not meant to be sexual, of course. But now, the microcosmic view, based on the human body. The 5 Shaktis of evolution are the 5 bodily elements: bone, flesh, fat, blood, and skin. They are elements waiting passively for the 4 Shaktis of involution. The 4 dynamic elements here: bone marrow, sexual fluid, life, and self. Involution. All entering the 5 body elements to create humanity. Now this is the microcosmic understanding of things. These lines are dynamic, subtle, and even mythic in a way. Moist sustenance, watery creation, and reproductive power. The spark of life, and a centering force, an organizing personality that gives the sense of self. So this is both basic stuff on our body level, and it is also cosmology. The intermingling of Shakti and Shiva. Sri Aurobindo says that integral yoga insists on both the aspects. Triangles intersected. The Sri Yantra is the body of the great coupling. Great coupling. These lines of light, it is said, build the form patterns of the gods. So we may think about earth, air, fire, water, and ether, or we can think about skin, blood, flesh, fat, and bone for the 5 descending triangles, and about illusion, pure wisdom, one God, and diversity of the sacred, or bone marrow, sexual fluids, life, and our own self for the 4 ascending ones. But as I said before, these details are not necessary for a deep understanding of Sri Yantra. Disc number 3. The poet sings, "His body is the dense sky. When she embraces it secretly, their breath of love spreads a hidden beauty all around. Then dance in space the glittering stars. They are the beads of perspiration of their intense union." So this first DVD has been a fairly important general introduction to the concept of Sri Yantra, Tantric practice of meditation and illumination. Part 2 are basic concepts. I have them highlighted here in white. Many people are familiar with them. If you wish, you can make this optional and go directly to the hard work, the hard part. That is the DVD number 3, the main meditational work with the Sri Yantra.